In 1986, a 16-year-old kid from Reseda, California walked into a bank and convinced a loan officer to give him a business loan. That alone is not a crime. What he did next absolutely was. By the time Barry Minkow was 21 years old, he had built a carpet cleaning company worth $200 million on paper, taken it public on the stock exchange, fooled some of the most sophisticated financial minds in America, and was about to watch every single piece of it burn to the ground. This is not a story about a genius. This is a story about audacity so extreme, so reckless, that it almost worked. Barry Minkow started ZZZZ Best, pronounced Z Best, out of his parents' garage in 1982. He was 14 years old. The name was chosen deliberately so it would appear last in the yellow pages, which back then was how people found local services. He was already thinking like a marketer before he was old enough to drive. He had energy, charisma, and an almost supernatural ability to make people believe whatever he needed them to believe. He also had almost no actual business acumen, mounting debts, and a serious problem with the truth. The carpet cleaning business was real, at least at first. Barry had workers, customers, and a legitimate operation running out of the San Fernando Valley. But the money was never quite enough. The costs outpaced the revenue. Barry needed cash to keep the lights on, to pay wages, to keep the illusion of growth alive. So he did what any resourceful teenage fraudster would do. He started stealing credit card numbers. He would run unauthorized charges, pocket the cash, and when the chargebacks came in he would scramble to cover them with whatever he could find. It was sloppy, desperate, and exactly the kind of behavior that should have ended everything before it ever began. But Barry had a gift. Every time someone came close to catching him, he talked his way out of it. He refined the lie over time. He moved from petty credit card fraud into something far more elaborate. The concept was called insurance restoration fraud, and it was elegant in its simplicity. Barry began telling investors and lenders that ZZZZ Best had contracts to restore large commercial buildings after fires and floods. These were not small jobs. He claimed contracts worth hundreds of thousands, then millions of dollars. Cleaning up after disasters, restoring carpet and interiors in office towers and apartment complexes across California. It sounded completely plausible. Disaster restoration was a real and lucrative industry. Barry had enough surface knowledge of the business to talk convincingly about square footage, labor costs, material requirements, and project timelines. The only problem was that essentially none of these restoration jobs existed. Barry created an entire fictional infrastructure to support the lie. He forged contracts. He fabricated invoices. He created fake companies that appeared to be clients. He hired people specifically to answer phones and pretend to be executives at these non-existent firms. When lenders or auditors wanted to verify a project site, Barry would perform what can only be described as elaborate theatrical productions. He would rent out a building temporarily, have workers bring in equipment, make it look like a massive restoration operation was underway, and then walk investors through the fake job site as if he were showing them his empire in action. People left those site visits completely convinced. They had seen it with their own eyes. There was no reason to doubt him. By the mid-1980s, Barry had secured millions in loans from various lenders, all backed by these fictional contracts. He was spending lavishly. He drove a Ferrari. He wore expensive suits. He appeared on national television. He gave motivational speeches about entrepreneurship and the American dream. He was celebrated in business magazines as a teenage phenomenon, a self-made success story. The more famous he became, the easier it was to raise more money, because who would question a kid this successful, this visible, this apparently beloved by the business community? The answer should have been everyone. But fraud works on borrowed time, and Barry was very good at buying time. In 1986, ZZZZ Best went public on the stock exchange. This was the moment that should have exposed everything. Going public means submitting to serious scrutiny. Accountants, lawyers, underwriters, the Securities and Exchange Commission, all of them are supposed to look closely at a company before it can sell shares to the general public. And they did look. They just did not look closely enough, or they were shown exactly what Barry wanted them to see. The accounting firm Ernst & Winnie conducted audits. They asked questions. Barry answered them with forged documents, coached employees, and carefully staged site visits. The auditors were professionals, but they were not investigators, and Barry understood the difference. He gave them enough to satisfy the checklist without ever letting them see the reality underneath. ZZZZ Best went public at a valuation that would eventually reach $200 million. Barry Minkow, at age 21, held a majority stake. On paper he was worth over $100 million. The press coverage was overwhelming. Here was a kid from the valley who had built a cleaning company into a Wall Street darling. Business schools wanted to study him. Motivational speakers cited him as an example. Investors were buying shares as fast as they could. Meanwhile, Barry was desperately shuffling money from one fraudulent loan to the next, paying old debts with new money, running what was in effect a giant Ponzi scheme disguised as a legitimate public company. The beginning of the end came not from Wall Street, not from auditors, and not from the SEC. It came from a woman named Pat Regan, a tenacious journalist and researcher who had been tipped off by some of Barry's earlier fraud victims. She started digging into the company's past and found the credit card fraud cases, the complaints, the inconsistencies. A story began appearing in the Los Angeles Times in May 1987, raising questions about Barry's background and the legitimacy of his business. Barry fought back publicly. He held press conferences. He denied everything. He pushed back against the story with characteristic confidence and charm. For a moment it seemed like he might actually survive it. But the story had cracked the surface, and now the pressure from investors and lenders and regulators was intensifying in ways that his staged theatrics could no longer contain. The accounting firm conducting the audit of the company's flagship restoration project was eventually taken to the actual building Barry had claimed was being restored. The problem was that nobody had told the actual building owner that ZZZZ Best was supposedly contracted to work there. When auditors began asking direct questions of people Barry could not control, the story fell apart almost immediately. Documents could not be verified. Companies that were supposed to be clients did not exist. Contracts that were supposed to be worth millions turned out to be pieces of paper with forged signatures. In July 1987, the auditors resigned. The stock collapsed. ZZZZ Best filed for bankruptcy within days. The company that had been valued at $200 million turned out to have almost no real assets at all. Investigators going through the books estimated that perhaps a few $100,000 of actual legitimate carpet cleaning revenue had existed at any point, buried under layers of fabricated transactions totaling in the tens of millions. Barry Minkow was arrested. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of what he had built. 26 counts of racketeering, securities fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and tax evasion. Investors had lost tens of millions of dollars. Banks had been defrauded. Employees had lost their jobs. The whole structure had been rotten from the very beginning, propped up entirely by documents that did not reflect reality and a teenager who could make you believe anything he said. In 1988, Barry Minkow was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He was 22 years old. What makes the ZZZZ Best fraud so remarkable is not the complexity of the scheme. In retrospect, the mechanics were relatively simple. What is remarkable is how far it got. It cleared regulatory reviews. It survived multiple audits. It attracted professional investors who managed billions of dollars for a living. It received enthusiastic coverage from financial journalists. Every institutional safeguard that was supposed to catch exactly this kind of thing either missed it, was deceived by it, or was too dazzled by the narrative to look carefully at the numbers. Barry Minkow understood something about human psychology that most fraudsters eventually stumble onto. People believe what they want to believe. When the story is compelling and the person telling it is confident and charming, the skeptical part of the brain goes quiet. Nobody wanted to be the one who doubted the remarkable teenage entrepreneur. The social cost of being wrong, of calling this celebrated kid a liar, was high enough that people found reasons to give him the benefit of the doubt. Barry exploited that instinct with remarkable precision. The ZZZZ best story did not end with his release from prison, which came in 1995 after serving about 7 years. He became a pastor in San Diego, gave talks about fraud and ethics, and even worked as a fraud consultant, helping companies identify the kinds of schemes he had once run. It seemed like a genuine redemption story. Then in 2011 he was convicted again, this time for defrauding the very church he led, along with a securities fraud scheme involving short-selling stocks he was publicly praising. He was sentenced to 5 years and ordered to pay back millions. Some people, it turns out, never stop running the same play. The lesson that financial regulators, auditors, and investors took from ZZZZ Best was painful but important. It led to significant changes in how auditors are supposed to verify third-party contracts and client relationships. It became a case study in business schools and fraud examination courses around the world. The Public Company Accounting Oversight Board still references it when training auditors about the limits of document verification and the necessity of independent confirmation. A 16-year-old with a carpet cleaning company and a talent for lying built a $200 million fiction and nearly got away with it. He did not have sophisticated technology. He did not have insider access or powerful friends. He had a phone, a printer, some rented buildings, and an absolute willingness to say whatever he needed to say to whoever was standing in front of him. That is both the most frightening and the most instructive part of this story. Every safeguard in the financial system assumes that the information being reviewed is real. Barry Minkow's entire operation was built on the discovery that if you replace the real information with convincing fake information, those safeguards often cannot tell the difference. The system was not designed for someone who understood the distinction and was willing to exploit it without hesitation. The carpet was always dirty. Nobody wanted to look underneath. If you want the full story and more dark business secrets, find us on YouTube at Corporate Crypt. The link is in the description. Subscribe so you never miss a story.